conform, blah, 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 right? We've basically ditched that since the end of World War II. Surprisingly enough, however, human beings have this obsession with human perfection, and now that has translated into more android discourse on singularity and the bio-integration, nano-integration of human biology and the machine state. And it makes for great sci-fi, but I think a lot of these people are trying to do this for real, which isn't necessarily a problem. I think it would be cool to be an android, but but you get the idea. Still in the same pursuit. We've changed the mask, it's not racial anymore, but there is still the pursuit for the best possible formation of the human body, the human existence. Now, what ends up happening with the presupposition is the presupposition is sort of a conduit, right? It's sort of, it's a conduit, there's no other way to say it, right? You can imagine then that the good and the just as form try to occupy this realm, but the individual body tries to occupy this realm. But what they don't tell you is the actual presupposition, and the presupposition is this black bar. There will never be an ability for the form of the good and the form of the just to occupy the same space as the physical body. Why? Because it's so blaringly obvious now. These are concepts. These are concepts. Right? One of the earliest critiques of Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of God is a recognition that just because you can conceptualize that which none greater can be conceived doesn't mean that the conceptualization of the greatest possible conception necessitates existence. I'm not going to go through the whole theological argument for it, but the idea is, can you think of the concept, that which none greater can be conceived, asks the theist to the atheist. The atheist says, of course, I can think of that which none greater can be conceived, as concept. The theist then says, well, don't you see that the greater conception is not just merely the abstracted conception, that which none greater can be conceived as concept, but that which none greater can be conceived as both concept and existent thing? That is a greater concept than that which none greater can be conceived as concept only. Thus, you have to sort of forego and relinquish your connection to just conceptual abstracted greatness for real greatness. The idea is you can't make that leap. That ontological leap is not justified. Similarly, the fact that you can conceptualize the greatest good in no sense necessitates a body to conform to that greatest good. The greatest good as a concept, sure. The form of justice as the greatest possible justice, sure. This is the foundation with which Rawls constitutes the veil of ignorance in his theory of justice, right? Think of yourself as being in a position where you can conceptualize increasing the advantage of those who are least advantaged. Sure, that's great. Dude, that's awesome. Wow, a white dude's thinking like that? That's pretty cool. You know, you put yourself outside of yourself to conceptualize bettering someone who's at the bottom. Cool. As concept, that's great. The greatest possible concept in no sense necessitates a corresponding body, right? So that the error in, again, the history of philosophy is again rooted in Platonic misconception, right? Anselm introduces this concept for his ontological justification for the proof of God from Plato's hierarchy of the forms. Right? It's not direct, but I mean, I just defended it. It's one-to-one. Again, Nietzsche's pulling his hair out of his head, thinking to himself, why is no one listening to me? Why is no one listening? Right? What we have to recognize is, though we can talk about conceptual abstraction and complication in its most magnificent sense, it in no sense posits a transcendental existence of bodies. At best, you have axioms in a mathematical sense. At best, you have norms in an ethical sense. At best, you have that which none greater can be conceived as concept only in terms of spiritual sense. But to then make the leap on any of those stances and say that that then constitutes the foundation with which we talk about physical, material, objects, corporeal substance. I don't want to use substance because substance has been collapsed, but you get the idea. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't follow. So the presupposition is that there could be a state in which both the world of transcendence is really infinite and the world of material substance as really finite conflate. That sounds familiar. Right. God the Father, as infinite, manifested himself through his prophet Jesus, so that the infinite became made finite. And then the finite returned to the infinite. So you get this very sort of cyclical hermeneutic, right? The infinite manifests itself finite, and that finite then returned to the infinite to complete this hermeneutic. Well, where did that come from? Says Nietzsche. That hermeneutic comes from the presupposition that there could be a correspondence between the world of existence and the good, and there just can't be. There just can't be. It is epistemologically erroneous to make such a move. And tons of research have gone into proving the erroneous nature of this all. Tons of research, right? Okay, so the great concepts good and just are severed from the presupposition to which they belong, and as liberated ideas become objects of dialectics, objects in the objective world, literally, commingling. One looks for truth in them. One takes them for entities or signs of entities. Again, very literal, it's undeniable. Entities, stuff, right? You've tried to make that epistemological leap, that ontological leap from that which none greater can be conceived to right there it is, that which none greater can be conceived. I mean, one looks for truth in them. One takes them for entities or signs of entities. One invents a world where they are at home, which is what I just said, where they originate. In Summa, the mischief has already reached its climax in Plato. Socrates represents a moment of the profoundest. Socrates represents a moment of the profoundest perversity in the history of values. Socrates dies as the martyr for this. Socrates dies as the martyr. The collapse of the physical, of the finite, for a return to the infinite. I'll let you read between the lines. Right? The collapse of the finite for a return to the infinite. It's here in Plato. Nietzsche is like, oh man. Last bit on page 75, and then this will conclude this very, very, very long section, 2-hour lecture for 4 notes. But I told you it was deep. There's a fundamental, this is me, there's a fundamental, this is why it's important, again, as I said in the previous video, I have to do these lecture series because when I sit down to write my first and probably only philosophical text, it's going to be conceptually dense. It's not going to be a whole bunch of footnotes. Really, I might just use just 1 or 2 texts to do what it is that I want to do academically as far as writing is concerned, but without an understanding, no one's gonna, very, very few people are going to know what it is that I'm trying to say. So hopefully this makes sense. There is a fundamental incompatibility with the assumption that the forms are eternal and perfect, prototypical, which inform this world of existence. Because to attain the form of the good, one has to leave, relinquish, renounce the world of existence. Since the body, our physical bodies, and the earth as a physical body exists within the world of existence, this position presupposes a physical denial of our existence prima facie. With that, I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch my lecture series. This lecture series officially marks the 50-hour Nietzsche lecture series. I, from the beginning, was adamant that I was going to do a 50-hour lecture series on Nietzsche, and I couldn't think of a better way to usher in the 50-hour mark than by diving headfirst into the discussion of sophistry. I seriously want to thank anybody who has watched from video 1 to whatever number video this is, because you've been watching me talk about Nietzsche for 50 hours. So, and that's consecutive. So, thank you very, very much. None of this would have been possible without your encouragement. I'm not even near done. I plan on doing a lot more, and we'll let the universe determine how much longer I get through this book, but I have accomplished my goal, and that's the only thing that matters. So, thank you very much. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed note 13.1, section 13.1 as much as I did. With that, I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day, and thanks for watching.